The morning sun shone gently over the city streets as Angela Brown pushed her son's wheelchair along the sidewalk, her hands trembling slightly from the chill and from nervousness. Her son, Michael, only 8 years old, smiled up at her, his small hands holding the edge of his blanket. He loved mornings because his mother always told him, "Every day can be special if we keep hope." Today was his birthday, and Angela had promised him a surprise, something different from all the other years. They were going to a restaurant, not just any restaurant, but the fanciest one in town, the one with shining windows, golden lights, and music that floated through the street every evening. Angela worked as a cleaner in an office nearby, and she had saved money for 3 months just to make this day happen. Her son had never been inside such a place, and though her heart worried if they would be welcomed, she wanted him to feel like any other child. "Are we really going there, Mom?" Michael asked softly, looking up, his big brown eyes full of wonder. Angela nodded, smiling though her eyes were a little tired. "Yes, sweetheart. Today we celebrate properly." She fixed his small blue jacket and made sure his wheelchair wheels were clean before they entered. The restaurant doors opened with a soft sound, and the smell of baked bread and coffee filled the air. The floor was shiny like a mirror, and the sound of quiet piano music made everything feel calm. Angela felt small for a moment. The tables were covered in white cloths, and everyone seemed rich and well-dressed. Still, she lifted her chin, holding Michael's hand, whispering, "We belong anywhere kindness exists." They moved slowly toward an empty table near the corner, far from the large windows where the light was brightest. As Angela pushed the wheelchair gently across the floor, she could feel some eyes turning toward them. A group of people sitting near the front looked at them with raised eyebrows, whispering something to each other. One woman smiled politely, but another man frowned slightly, glancing at Michael's chair as if it didn't belong there. Angela noticed but pretended not to, her heart tightening but her face calm. She wanted this day to be perfect for her son, and nothing, not even cold looks, would ruin it. The waiter, a young man named Tom, came over with a notepad and a warm smile. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I get you and your son something to drink?" Angela smiled gratefully. "Just water for now, please." Tom nodded kindly and leaned toward Michael. "Happy birthday, young man." "You've got the best seat in the house," Michael grinned, shy but happy, and Angela's heart softened. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to her son like that. As Tom walked away, Angela looked around the restaurant again, admiring the golden lamps and framed pictures on the walls. She remembered how her late husband had promised to take them to places like this one day. Life had been hard since he passed, but she had learned to stay strong for Michael. Every time she looked at his smiling face, she felt strength she didn't know she had. Then a sudden voice interrupted her thoughts. "Excuse me," a man said, his tone deep and cold. Angela turned and saw a tall man in a dark gray suit standing a few steps away. His face was serious, his eyes sharp. He looked like someone in charge. "Why did you bring your son in a wheelchair here?" he asked, not loudly, but with a tone that made Angela's stomach drop. The restaurant grew quiet for a moment. Angela blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. I'm sorry?" The man crossed his arms. "This place is for customers who come to relax. It's not meant for special needs situations. It can make others uncomfortable." Angela's throat tightened, and she felt the warmth of tears pressing behind her eyes. She looked down at Michael, who was staring at the table now, his hands shaking slightly. Her heart broke, not for herself, but for her boy who had only wanted to eat cake like everyone else. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she took a deep breath and replied softly, "Sir, I brought my son here because it's his birthday, and I wanted him to smile." Her voice was calm, even though her heart was in pain. The man looked at her for a second longer, then said nothing and walked away. Angela sat back down, her hands trembling as she adjusted the napkin on the table. She whispered to Michael, "Don't listen to that, baby. You are perfect the way you are." Michael tried to smile, but his voice was small. "Mom, maybe we should go." Angela shook her head. "No, sweetheart, we're staying. You deserve to eat here as much as anyone." The waiter, Tom, returned just then, sensing something wrong. He noticed Angela's wet eyes and the tension in the air. Quietly, he said, "Don't worry, ma'am. You and your son are my favorite guests today." That small kindness brought a real smile back to her face. As the waiter left to bring their food, Angela looked around once more. This time not with fear, but with pride. She wasn't rich and she wasn't powerful. But she had love, and that was more than enough outside. The sunlight touched the window near their table, casting a warm glow around them. Angela took Michael's hand and said softly, "Today, let's show the world that love can sit anywhere, even at the finest table." And with that, their story, one that would soon touch a billionaire's heart, had quietly begun. The restaurant returned to its quiet rhythm after the uncomfortable moment, but Angela could still feel the man's words echoing in her mind. She held her son's hand tightly, pretending everything was fine, yet deep inside, she felt a storm of pain and shame. She didn't want her son, Michael, to see her tears, so she smiled and asked softly, "What do you want to eat, birthday boy?" Michael looked at the menu with bright eyes but trembling lips. "Can we have pancakes, Mom?" Angela nodded and whispered, "Of course, sweetheart," even though she knew the price was higher than she could afford. Across the room, the man in the gray suit, Mr. Rowland, watched them silently. He was the owner of the restaurant, a billionaire who liked to keep his identity private. He often came dressed like a simple manager to observe how his staff treated people. But today something in him felt cold, as if the world had reminded him of an old wound. He wasn't angry at Angela or her son. He was angry at life, and he didn't even realize it. Mr. Rowland had lost his wife and daughter years ago in a tragic car accident. His daughter had used a wheelchair just like Michael. Every time he saw one, memories would rush back like waves, memories he had spent years trying to bury under work, money, and silence. That pain had hardened his heart. And now, without thinking, he had spoken with bitterness that was never meant for Angela. Still, he couldn't stop watching them. He saw Angela quietly feeding her son, smiling through her pain. She didn't raise her voice or demand attention. She only focused on making her son happy. The boy laughed when the waiter brought a small candle and placed it on top of his pancake. Tom, the kind waiter, said, "Make a wish, little man." And Michael closed his eyes, smiling when he opened them again. He blew the candle softly and whispered, "I wish Mom never cries again." Angela's heart nearly broke right there, and even Mr. Rowland, sitting far away, felt something shift inside him. The other guests began to notice the gentle joy at their table. Some smiled. A few clapped quietly, and the earlier tension in the room faded. Even the same woman who had frowned earlier now looked ashamed of herself. Angela thanked everyone softly, her eyes glistening but proud. For the first time that day, she felt like the world still had kindness left in it. Mr. Rowland called the head waiter to his table. "Who are they?" he asked quietly, pretending to sound casual. The waiter replied, "That's Angela Brown, sir. She comes from the neighborhood near the old factory. The boy's her son, Michael. Today's his birthday." Mr. Rowland nodded, his fingers tapping the table. "Do they come here often?" "No, sir. First time." "I think she saved money just for this," the waiter said softly. Rowland said nothing, but his eyes softened a little, though pride still kept his face stern. Meanwhile, Angela leaned close to Michael. "Are you happy, baby?" Michael nodded. "Yes, Mom. This is the best day ever." Those words were like music to her heart. She didn't need luxury, only moments like this. But then Tom returned to the kitchen, whispering to his coworkers about what had happened. Some felt sad, some angry at how the manager had spoken. Word spread quietly, and even the chef shook his head, saying, "That woman's stronger than most people who walk in here." At his private corner, Mr. Rowland sat alone, staring at his reflection in the polished table. He saw not a powerful man, but someone who had lost touch with what really mattered. He remembered his daughter's laughter, the way she used to say, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'll run with you." But she never got that chance, and the guilt had eaten him alive ever since. His wealth had built walls around him, but today those walls began to crack. He asked his assistant quietly, "Do you know if that boy has ever been treated?" The assistant replied, "I'm not sure, sir, but I can find out." Rowland shook his head. "No, not now. Not yet. Just make sure their bill is covered." Then he paused, his voice lowering, "And tell no one." While they ate, Angela noticed something strange. The waiter never brought the bill. When she asked, Tom smiled gently. "It's already been taken care of, ma'am. Someone wanted to make your son's birthday special." Angela's eyes widened. "Who?" Tom shook his head. "I can't say, but they send their best wishes." Angela looked around the restaurant, searching for an answer, but the man in the gray suit was already gone. As she wheeled Michael outside, the evening light touched their faces. She didn't know that the man who had hurt her with his words was also the one who had paid for their meal. She didn't know that her quiet strength had stirred something long lost inside him, and while she pushed the wheelchair down the street, her heart whispered, maybe kindness still exists in places we don't expect. Meanwhile, from his car window, Mr. Rowland watched them leave. He stayed silent as his driver asked, "Sir, shall we go?" Rowland's gaze followed Angela's figure disappearing into the distance. He said quietly, almost to himself, "That woman, she carries more dignity than most people in this city." And for the first time in years, the billionaire felt something human, something warm, return to his heart. He didn't know it yet. But this meeting was only the beginning of a change that would touch all three of their lives forever. Outside the restaurant, the sky had turned golden as the sun slowly began to set. Angela pushed Michael's wheelchair gently along the pavement. The cool evening wind brushing against their faces, she was quiet, lost in thought, replaying every moment from the restaurant, the stairs, the words, the surprise at the end. Michael hummed softly, holding the small candle that the waiter had given him as a birthday keepsake. "Mom," he said, "that man in the gray suit. He didn't like us, right?" Angela hesitated, her heart heavy, then she smiled softly. "Maybe he just forgot what kindness feels like." Michael nodded, as if trying to understand something far bigger than his age could hold. They stopped near a small park where children were playing, their laughter echoing through the air. Angela parked the wheelchair near a bench and sat beside her son. She took out a small cupcake she had hidden in her bag, a homemade one with chocolate cream. Lighting a tiny candle on top, she whispered, "Make one more wish." "My little hero." Michael smiled brightly. "I wish we could go to that restaurant again someday, but this time no one would look at us like we don't belong." Angela's eyes shimmered with tears, but she clapped her hands and said cheerfully, "Then that's what we'll do next birthday." As the two laughed quietly, a woman passing by slowed her steps. She had seen them inside the restaurant earlier, Clara Wilson, a travel journalist known for her sharp writing and big heart. She had noticed the awkward moment earlier, the man in the gray suit and the sadness on Angela's face. Now, seeing them again under the golden light, something tugged at her soul. She walked toward them with a kind smile. "Excuse me, I saw you earlier at the Golden Leaf restaurant." Angela looked up politely. "Oh, yes, we were there for my son's birthday." Clara crouched slightly to look at Michael. "Happy birthday, young man. Did you have fun?" Michael grinned shyly. "It was good. My mom made it special." Clara smiled warmly. "You have the best mom in the world." Angela laughed softly. "Thank you, ma'am." "I try." Clara noticed the small cracks in Angela's shoes, the careful way she folded her son's blanket, the quiet grace in her eyes. She sat beside them and said gently, "You know, I couldn't help but notice how that man spoke to you earlier. It wasn't right." Angela's face grew still. "It's fine. People say worse things sometimes. I just don't want my son to think the world is cruel." Clara nodded slowly. "You're stronger than you think." A silence fell for a moment, filled only by the sound of children's laughter. Then Clara asked softly, "Do you mind if I buy you both some dinner? There's a food truck nearby. The best sandwiches in town." Angela smiled kindly but shook her head. "You've already done enough by stopping to talk to us," but Clara gently insisted. "Please, not as charity, as a birthday gift." Michael's eyes lit up again. "Can I have one with extra cheese?" Clara laughed. "You got it." The three walked together toward the small food truck parked by the corner. The smell of grilled bread and butter filled the air, making Michael's stomach growl. They sat at a little metal table beside the truck, eating warm sandwiches under a sky painted in pink and orange. Angela laughed for the first time that evening. Clara asked questions about her life, where she worked, how long she had been raising Michael alone. Angela spoke simply, not complaining, just telling the truth. "Life isn't easy, but my boy gives me every reason to keep going." Clara listened carefully, her heart filling with admiration later. As Michael finished his sandwich and began drawing with ketchup on the paper plate, Clara leaned toward Angela and said, "I'm a writer. I share real stories that inspire people. Would you allow me to write about you and your son?" Angela was surprised. "About us? Why?" Clara smiled softly. "Because the world needs to see that strength doesn't wear fancy clothes. Sometimes it pushes a wheelchair with love." Angela hesitated. Unsure. "I don't want pity." Clara shook her head. "It won't be pity. It'll be respect." After a long pause, Angela nodded slowly. If it helps someone, then yes. That night, after they said goodbye, Clara went home and wrote her story. She titled it, "The Woman Who Brought Hope in a Wheelchair." Her words painted Angela and Michael not as victims but as lights in a dark, uncaring world. She described how love could exist even in places of judgment, and how one act of kindness could change everything. The story spread quickly online, touching hearts across the city. People began sending messages, asking who the woman was, offering help. Angela didn't know any of this yet. She was at home, tucking Michael into bed, whispering, "Good night." My birthday star, across town, Mr. Rowland, sat in his office. Restless, unable to focus, his assistant entered, holding a tablet. "Sir, you might want to see this. It's going viral." Rowland looked at the screen. The same woman and boy from the restaurant, their faces smiling under the sunset. He read the story quietly, every line piercing deeper into his heart. By the end, his eyes were wet and he whispered, "That's her, the one I hurt." He stood up, walked to the window and said softly, "I need to find her." That night, the billionaire couldn't sleep for the first time in years. He didn't think about his money or his business. He thought about a woman's strength and a child's smile. Somewhere, deep in his soul, he knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning of a lesson life was trying to teach him. A lesson that love, no matter how small, could still awaken a sleeping heart. That night, Mr. Rowland sat in his study, staring at the glowing screen of his tablet. The article about the woman and her son had spread everywhere, shared by thousands within hours. He scrolled slowly, reading each line carefully. Every sentence felt like a mirror showing his own mistakes. The headline read, "The Woman Who Brought Hope in a Wheelchair." And beneath it was Angela's photo, smiling beside her son under the sunset. Her face was peaceful, yet strong. The face of someone who had learned to rise quietly after every fall. For a long time, Mr. Rowland didn't move. The world around him was silent, except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. He remembered how he had once spoken to her, coldly, without thought, without heart. Now that same woman was being praised by the entire city for her strength and kindness. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, whispering to himself, "What have I become?" Years ago, Rowland had built his empire from nothing. He had worked day and night, creating businesses, earning money, buying buildings, until people called him the invisible billionaire. But in all those years, he had lost something far more valuable than wealth. His compassion. His wife, Evelyn, had always told him, "Money is only powerful when it helps someone breathe easier." But after she and their daughter died, those words turned into echoes he tried to forget. He opened an old drawer and pulled out a small box covered in dust. Inside was a photo, his little girl, Lena, sitting in a wheelchair, smiling brightly with a birthday hat. Her eyes were the same shade as Michael's. Full of dreams and light, Rowland's chest tightened, memories flooding back, the hospital visits. Her laughter, her final words, "Daddy, don't stop helping people." He had promised he wouldn't. But he had, that day at the restaurant. He hadn't seen Angela and Michael. He had seen ghosts from his own pain. The next morning, Rowland arrived early at the restaurant. The staff greeted him nervously. Some had read the viral story too. They whispered quietly as he passed. They all knew what had happened. Rowland didn't get angry. He simply said, "Everyone, please sit down. I need to talk." His voice was calm but carried a deep sadness that made everyone listen. "I've made mistakes," he began, not just as a boss, but as a human being. He looked around at the faces, the waiters, the chefs, the cleaners, all watching silently. Yesterday, a woman and her son came here. I treated them unfairly. I let my pain control my words. A few gasps came from the staff, and one of them, the young waiter Tom, lowered his eyes respectfully. Rowland continued, "From now on, this restaurant will be known not for its luxury, but for its kindness. No one will ever be turned away because of who they are or what they look like." The room filled with quiet pride, and a few clapped softly, for the first time in years. Rowland's voice carried not power but sincerity. Later that day, Rowland asked his assistant to find Angela's address. It took some effort, but by evening he had it. He sat in his car outside her small apartment building, watching through the rain-specked window. The lights inside were dim. He could see a shadow, A woman reading to a child by candlelight. He didn't knock, didn't want to frighten her. He just watched quietly. Something about the simple warmth of that home made him realize how far he had drifted from real happiness. The next morning, Roland called his charity director. "I want to start a new foundation," he said firmly. "For children with physical challenges and for single parents who never give up." The director sounded surprised. "That's wonderful, sir. What should we call it?" Roland thought for a moment, then whispered, "The Lena Hope Foundation." When he hung up, his eyes glistened with tears. For the first time in many years, he felt like his daughter was smiling somewhere above him. Across town, Angela woke up early to prepare for work. She didn't know about the new foundation, or that the same man who had hurt her heart was now trying to make things right. She only knew that life had somehow started to change. Neighbors smiled more, strangers offered help, and people recognized her from the article. Michael laughed as he showed her the story on a phone someone had printed for them. "Mom, people are calling you a hero." Angela smiled softly. "I'm no hero, baby. I just did what any mother would do." But fate wasn't finished weaving their stories together yet. That evening, as Angela arrived at her cleaning job in a tall office building, she froze. There in the hallway stood Mr. Roland, talking with another manager. He turned slightly, and their eyes met for the first time since that painful day. For a second, everything went silent. The air, the room, even her heartbeat. Roland's expression softened. He stepped forward and said quietly, "Mrs. Brown, I've been looking for you." Angela hesitated, unsure if she should stay or walk away. Roland continued gently, "I owe you more than an apology. May I speak to you for a moment?" The kindness in his voice felt real this time. It wasn't the cold man from before. Angela nodded slowly. "All right," she said softly, holding Michael's hand, and as the two walked toward the elevator, neither of them knew that the conversation waiting upstairs would change their lives forever. The next morning was quiet in the city, a light mist covering the streets inside a tall glass building. Angela Brown stood near the cleaning cart, her hands gloved and her eyes focused on her work. It was still early, before the office lights came on, and she liked that peaceful silence before the world woke up. Her son Michael was at school, excited to tell his teacher about the story that had gone viral. Angela smiled, remembering his words, "Mom, the world knows we are strong now." She was polishing the edge of a desk when the elevator doors opened behind her. Footsteps echoed softly, steady, confident, and somehow familiar. When she looked up, her breath caught. Standing there was Mr. Roland, the same man who had once asked her that cruel question. But this time he didn't wear the cold expression she remembered. He held a bouquet of white lilies and a small envelope. "Mrs. Brown," he said gently, "I hope I'm not disturbing your work?" Angela froze for a second. Unsure what to say, her heart raced. Part of her still hurt from that day, and another part wondered why he was here now. "You don't owe me anything, sir," she said quietly. "It's all in the past." Roland shook his head slowly. "That's exactly why I'm here. To make things right, not just say sorry." He walked closer, his voice soft, full of the kind of regret that words rarely carry. "I've spent my life surrounded by walls, and walls built from pride, fear, and money. That day I spoke from my pain, not from my heart." Angela looked at the lilies, then at the envelope. "Sir, you don't have to." "I do," Roland interrupted gently. "Because that moment changed me. You showed grace when I showed arrogance. You reminded me that humanity is not in wealth, it's in kindness." He extended the envelope toward her. "Please take this. It's not a payment, it's a promise." Angela opened it carefully. Inside was a printed letter and a folded document. The letter read, "Dear Mrs. Brown, I have created a foundation in memory of my daughter, the Lena Hope Foundation. The first beneficiary will be your son Michael. This scholarship will cover his full education and provide the medical support he needs to live freely. And if you're willing, I would like to offer you a new position, not as a cleaner, but as part of the foundation team, because the world needs people like you." "Roland," Angela's hands trembled as she read it. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from pity but from disbelief. She whispered, "You didn't have to do this." Roland smiled faintly. "Maybe not, but I wanted to. You reminded me of who I used to be, and before I forgot how to care." Angela took a deep breath, her heart full. "I forgive you, Mr. Roland. Truly. What you said that day hurt, but It led to this moment. Roland lowered his head slightly. You're far stronger than anyone I know. The elevator door opened again, and a soft voice echoed. Mom? It was Michael, holding a small paper airplane. Smiling brightly, he had come with one of Angela's co-workers after school to visit her. When he saw Mr. Roland, his smile turned shy. You're the man from the restaurant. Roland knelt beside him, his voice kind and gentle. Yes, I am. And I came to say I'm sorry, Michael. I was wrong. Michael blinked, surprised, then said softly, It's okay. Grown-ups make mistakes too. Roland chuckled softly. You're wise for your age. Then Roland handed him a small box wrapped in blue paper. Michael's eyes widened. Can I open it? Of course, Roland said, smiling. Inside was a miniature wheelchair made of shining silver, engraved with the words, Keep rolling toward hope. Michael held it like a treasure, whispering, It's beautiful, Roland said softly. It's a reminder that you can go anywhere you dream. Son. Angela covered her mouth to hide her tears. For years she had felt invisible, but now, for the first time, someone powerful saw her humanity. They all went downstairs together, the morning sun breaking through the mist. Roland's driver stood by the car, but he waved him off, saying, I'll walk them home. As they walked through the street, people recognized Angela and Michael from the viral story. Some smiled, some nodded respectfully, but Angela just kept walking quietly. Roland noticed the simplicity in her steps. There was no pride, no anger, only peace. When they reached her small apartment, Roland looked around the neighborhood, the narrow alleys, the cracked walls, the children playing barefoot. He turned to her and said, Would you allow me to help rebuild this place? Safe homes, better schools, not charity but community. Angela's eyes widened. You'd really do that? Roland nodded. It's time I used my money for something that matters. Michael looked up, his voice soft. Then maybe the world will be kinder, right? Roland smiled warmly. That's the plan, little man. Before leaving, Roland looked at Angela one last time and said, You and your son gave me back something I lost, faith. Angela replied softly. And you gave us something too, hope? They shook hands, not as a billionaire and a worker, but as two people who had finally understood each other. As the car drove away, Michael looked at his mother and whispered, Mom, he changed. Angela nodded, holding his small hand. Yes, baby. Because kindness can change anyone, even those who forgot how to feel. Later that evening, as she stood by the window watching the sunset, Angela smiled. Life had not given her everything she wanted, but it had given her something far more beautiful, a reason to believe again. And somewhere across the city, Mr. Roland sat in his office, writing a note for tomorrow's newspaper. It read, True wealth is not in what we keep, but in what we share. And beneath that note, he signed his name for the first time in years, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had finally remembered what it meant to have a heart. The sun rose softly over the city, painting the sky in gold and pink. Inside her small apartment, Angela Brown folded the last of Michael's school clothes. The air smelled of warm tea and fresh hope. Her son's laughter filled the room as he practiced writing his name on a new notebook. A gift from Mr. Roland. Life had changed so suddenly, yet so quietly. No fancy cars, no headlines now, just peace and gratitude. That morning, Angela had been invited to visit the new office of the Lena Hope Foundation. She didn't know what to expect, only that Mr. Roland wanted to show her something. As she pushed Michael's wheelchair into the tall glass building, she felt her heart beating faster. Every wall was bright with pictures of smiling children, some in wheelchairs, some walking with braces, all full of light. A banner on the wall read, Hope is the strongest muscle we have. A young assistant greeted her warmly. Mrs. Brown? Mr. Roland is waiting for you. She led them to a quiet room with wide windows and soft sunlight. Inside, Roland stood near a framed photograph of his daughter, Lena, the girl who had inspired the foundation. He turned when he heard the door, smiling softly. You made it, Angela nodded. Still unsure what to say. This place is beautiful. Sir, Roland's voice was gentle. It's beautiful because of what you started. Angela blinked, surprised. Me? He nodded slowly. If you hadn't come to that restaurant that day, if you hadn't shown grace in the face of cruelty, I would still be a man lost in his own pride. He looked out the window for a moment, then said, I've apologized before, but today I want to do it the right way. Angela stayed quiet, feeling the weight of his words. Roland took a deep breath and walked closer. When I saw you and your son, I didn't see you, I saw my pain, he said quietly. My daughter Lena was in a wheelchair too. Losing her broke something inside me. I buried myself in money, in work, in silence, until I forgot how to see people. His eyes grew misty, his voice trembling slightly. I judged you because I couldn't face my own memories. I let my bitterness speak where my heart should have listened. He knelt slowly in front of Michael's wheelchair, his voice soft but sincere. Son, I'm so sorry for what I said that day. I thought I was strong, but you and your mother showed me what real strength is. Michael looked at him with curious eyes. Not afraid, just thoughtful, sir, he said softly. My mom told me we forgive people because everyone needs another chance. Roland smiled faintly, a tear escaping down his cheek. Your mother is a wise woman, and you, young man, are a true teacher. Angela watched silently, her own tears rolling down as she whispered, Mr. Roland, you don't need to kneel. But Roland shook his head, still kneeling. Maybe not, but sometimes the richest man must bow before the truth. For a moment, the room was completely still. No words, no sound, just emotion. Then Roland slowly stood up, turning toward Angela. I want you to lead the community program for this foundation, he said, his tone firm but kind. You know struggle. You know compassion, qualities money can't buy. Will you help me bring hope to others? Angela was stunned. Me? But I'm not educated like your staff. I'm just... Roland interrupted softly. You're exactly what this place needs. Someone real. Michael clapped his hands excitedly. Mom, you can help more kids like me. Angela laughed through her tears. Maybe I can. Roland smiled. Not maybe. Definitely. He guided them to a small hallway where a new plaque hung on the wall. Angela leaned closer and gasped softly. It read, This foundation is dedicated to Lena Roland and to all mothers who never give up. Starting with Angela Brown. Her eyes widened, and her lips trembled. You didn't have to put my name here. Roland smiled. It's not just your name, it's your story. Every visitor who reads it will know that kindness can change lives. Angela placed her hand over her heart, whispering, Thank you, sir. For believing in us. Just then the door opened, and Clara Wilson, the journalist who had written the article, walked in with her camera crew. She smiled brightly. I heard this foundation was inspired by a story. I had to see it with my own eyes. Roland shook her hand. It was your article that showed me the truth I was blind to. Clara turned to Angela and Michael. You two started something bigger than you know. Angela blushed, smiling shyly. I only wanted my son to feel happy for one day, Clara said warmly. And because of that, thousands of families will smile for years. The crew took photos, capturing the moment. Roland standing beside Angela and Michael. Behind them, the sunlight streamed through the glass, touching their faces with golden light. It looked like a painting. 3 lives connected by one powerful word: forgiveness. Later that afternoon, as the crowd left, Roland walked Angela and Michael to the lobby. Before they parted, he said softly, You know, I used to believe apologies were just words. Angela looked at him curiously. And now? Roland smiled. Now I know they're bridges. Bridges that lead us back to the people we should have been all along. Angela nodded slowly. You found your heart again, Mr. Roland. He chuckled. No. Mrs. Brown, you gave it back to me. Outside, as the elevator doors closed, Angela looked down at her son and whispered, See, Michael? Even the hardest hearts can soften when touched by truth. He smiled up at her, holding her hand. Then let's keep helping people smile too. Mom. Angela kissed his forehead and said softly, That's our new mission, baby, to pass hope forward. And as they stepped out into the bright afternoon, the world seemed lighter, warmer, because forgiveness had not only healed wounds, it had built a new beginning for them all. A few months passed since that emotional day at the Lena Hope Foundation. The air of change could be felt not just in one building, but across the whole city. Posters of the foundation appeared in schools, hospitals, and community centers. People had begun to call it the House of Second Chances. And at the heart of it all was a woman who had once been turned away from a restaurant, Angela Brown. She now walked through the wide halls of the foundation every morning, no longer with a cleaning cart, but with a folder of projects and a warm smile. Children greeted her as Miss Angela, some running to hug her, others waving from wheelchairs. Her voice, once quiet and unsure, now carried confidence and calm. She didn't see herself as a leader, only as someone helping others stand tall again. Her son Michael had grown stronger too, with the support from the foundation. He began physical therapy sessions every day. He learned to move his legs a little more. He would laugh and say, "Mom, one day I'll race you to the park." Angela would smile and reply, "I'll let you win every time." But deep down, she knew he didn't need to run to win. He had already conquered life in ways most people never could. Meanwhile, Mr. Rowland had changed more than anyone could imagine. He had stopped hiding behind his wealth and started showing up in places where help was needed most. He visited schools, hospitals, and small neighborhoods, always quietly, never with cameras or crowds. He had learned that true power didn't come from attention, but from action. At every stop he would tell people, kindness is not charity, it's humanity. One day, Rowland stood by his daughter's photo in the foundation's main hall. He whispered softly, "Lena, your wish came true." People are smiling again. He smiled through tears, knowing that somewhere, his daughter's spirit was watching, proud and peaceful. Just then, Angela entered the hall with Michael beside her. "Talking to your daughter again, sir?" she asked gently. Rowland nodded. "She listens better than anyone I know." Angela chuckled. "Then she must be proud. Look what you've built." Rowland turned to her and said, "No, look what we've built." That afternoon, the foundation hosted its biggest community event yet. The Day of Hope. Hundreds of families arrived. Children played with balloons and volunteers handed out gifts and food. Music played in the courtyard and laughter filled the air. Michael rolled up to the stage, holding a microphone with both hands. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice bright and clear. Everyone clapped and cheered. He continued, "This place gave my mom and me a new life. But it's not just for us. It's for everyone who believes in hope." Rowland and Angela stood in the front row, both wiping quiet tears as the crowd cheered louder. After the event ended, Clara Wilson, the journalist who had written their story, came to see them again. She smiled. "You two have become the city's heart." Angela laughed softly. "We just shared kindness. The rest happened on its own." Clara nodded. "You know, I think people needed this story. It reminded them that one act of grace can change the world." Angela smiled humbly. "Then let's keep changing it, one heart at a time." Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Rowland invited Angela and Michael to the rooftop garden. The view stretched across the glowing skyline, the city lights twinkling like stars. Rowland said quietly, "You know, Angela, this garden was my daughter's idea. She wanted a place where everyone could feel free." Angela looked around at the flowers and benches. "It's perfect, peaceful." Rowland turned to Michael. "And you, young man, how's school?" Michael grinned proudly. "I got an A in science. I'm going to build robots that help people walk." Rowland's eyes softened. "You already help people. Something to do with your courage." For a moment, they stood together, watching the orange sky fade into purple. The breeze carried laughter from below, children playing, families talking, life moving forward. Angela thought about how everything had started. One cruel question, one painful moment. Yet it had led here. Sometimes, she realized, life's hardest moments are only doors waiting to be opened. She looked at Rowland and said softly, "It's strange how something that once hurt became the reason for so much good." Rowland nodded. "Pain can destroy or rebuild. You chose to rebuild, and I followed your lead." As the night grew darker, lights flickered on around the rooftop. Michael looked up at the stars and whispered, "Mom, maybe Dad is watching too." Angela smiled, her eyes misty. "I'm sure he is, and he's proud of you." Rowland put a hand on her shoulder. "You both taught me that family isn't always by blood. Sometimes it's by heart." Angela nodded. "And hearts don't need wealth to connect." They stood there quietly for a long time. Three souls once broken, now healed by understanding below them. The city glowed brighter than ever. a city that had learned from their story, because kindness had rippled through its streets like light touching every corner. The sign at the entrance of the building shone in the night breeze, the Lena Hope Foundation, where love builds tomorrow. As Angela wheeled Michael toward the elevator, she looked back one last time. Roland waved, smiling softly. "See you tomorrow, Mrs. Brown. We still have many lives to change." Angela smiled back. "Yes, Mr. Roland. Tomorrow." And every day after that, when they reached home, Michael fell asleep quickly. Tired but happy, Angela stood by the window. Watching the stars twinkle above, she whispered, "Thank you, God, for turning pain into purpose." And as the city slept, the quiet hum of life carried one truth through every heart: that forgiveness, once given, never ends where it begins. It grows, it heals, and it becomes the light that leads every soul to a new beginning.